Now that I've reminded myself of the things I used to do, sitting in circles and meditating and trying to get into the beyond, I guess, I've remembered the good things about it. I gave up trying to climb the mountain of wisdom when I came to the conclusion that I really was never getting anywhere, because I was always stumbling about in the foothills and never finding the way to go, and maybe spirituality wasn't real after all. And because I was fairly happy in my emotional life, I guess, because I'd got married again, and because I was fairly busy with making a living. We bought a hotel, and for 3 years we were run off our feet trying to make the hotel work. And then we started a business selling books, and that was kind of intellectually challenging, I suppose. Filled a gap. And now I'm retired, and now I'm confronted with fairly serious health issues. I'm inevitably turning again towards the esoteric ideas that did sustain me, and I'm thinking, yes, they did things for me, and they probably still could. And the algorithm of YouTube has been leading me from one thing to another. Some interesting videos. I found something called the Essentia Foundation. This is a YouTube channel. And I watched an interview with a guy called, Federico Faggin, who's talking about quantum information parapsychism explained. And I made a few notes about what he said, because it was too much to take in, really. He's talking quantum this and quantum that, and how our essence is not physical, etc. He says every one of us is a field which is both the observed, the observer, and the actor. And I thought that was important. I need to get a handle on that. Every one of us is a field which is both the observed, the observer, and the actor. So our consciousness, it consists of that which observes ourselves. We're aware of ourselves. We're observing what we do, what we think, what we feel. But we are also the thing that is observed, thinking and feeling, but we also have agency. And that's reassuring to me, because one does shift towards the view that perhaps one doesn't have agency if you take a kind of scientific materialist view of the world, and everything seems to happen without you being able to affect it, even though they do talk about the wing of the butterfly on one side of the world affecting things on the other side of the world. It's hard to see that. And I had kind of got into a gentle slide towards old age, of resignation of, well, I've had quite a good life. I've had 2 husbands. I've had various opportunities to learn and grow, and what happens to me is what happens to everyone. You live your life, you learn your lessons, and then you die. However, now that I have the space to focus on these ideas again, I'm thinking there is something in them. And also because I've taken an interest lately in the kind of UFO thing, that if you look for it, there's an awful lot of people talking about it on the internet. And all my life I've read various books. I had J. Allen Hynek's Close Encounters of the Third Kind when I was quite a young person, and I was quite enthralled by that, but nothing really came of it. And then they made a movie of the same name, and it all seemed very silly, actually. E.T., phone home. So there has been a thread of interest in these things through my life, and then recently I kind of latched onto it again and have been seriously obsessing over whether there really are aliens on our world. I've come to the conclusion that so many people say that there are. Perhaps there are. Perhaps they are the same as the angels and demons and fairies and what have you. And they're probably not all benevolent, and so one has to be very careful in attracting them into one's life. And I'm not really at a point where I want to terrify myself and put my health at further risk by, I don't know, attracting things in my urge to seek truth that perhaps I shouldn't have attracted. And I need to know what it is that attracts people so I can avoid doing it. Anyway, so yeah, I caught another video by a lady who was doing manifestation technique. There was a guy called Neville Goddard who developed this manifestation technique, where what you do is you go into meditation and you envision what it is you want to attract into your life, but you put yourself into the emotional state and the mental state and the experiential state where you're feeling that actually this already is in your life. And by feeling that it is in your life, in a relaxed meditative state, you're kind of drawing it to you. You envision your desires, immerse yourself in the feeling of the desired outcome. And by saying, "Isn't it wonderful?" while visualizing your desired life, you align your thoughts and emotions with the manifestation process. So, yeah, I mean, if you attract things into your life, that was a very popular idea decades ago in the kind of dawn of the New Age, where everybody was doing channeling and talking woo-woo. And probably people still are. I kind of threw out my woo-woo books, but maybe there's something to manifestation. That lady on her YouTube video said that she'd manifested a new job and a better income and, I don't know, various things into her life which she felt she needed. And this kind of aligns with the idea of agency, the other one. You're both the observer and the actor, so you act within this field. You're not physical, you manifest the physical. The physical is there because of you. I don't know, it's one of those fields of study which it's really difficult to lay out in black and white terms. So there's another guy, Darius Wright, who was talking about this idea that we come into this world where we're kind of constrained by our physical selves, but it is possible to do remote viewing and kind of go beyond the physical while you are still in your body. He said, and I wrote this down because I thought it was quite profound, "You cannot have ultimate expression of freedom with a limitation. You cannot have unconditional love with a judgment. And consciousness dictates the universe. The universe does not dictate consciousness." That seems to be the heart of what he has to say. You cannot have ultimate expression of freedom with a limitation. You cannot have unconditional love with judgment. And that reminded me of something I read years ago when I was still a teenager. It was an article in a Reader's Digest magazine about how anyone can become psychic. And this guy was saying, all you have to do is you have to keep telling yourself, "Judge not, lest ye also be judged." So this is a quote from the King James Version of the Holy Bible. "Judge not, lest ye also be judged." So I spent some time focusing on this idea. I wrote it many times in my diary, so I would keep coming across it. You know, my blank pages would have "Judge not, lest ye also be judged" every time I turned the page, and so I started to write things. I would see this message. But I was pretty ignorant. I didn't really get into it. I didn't really appreciate what that was about. Judge not, lest ye also be judged. It's easy to focus on the "lest ye also be judged" and not realise that actually it's about not judging. If you judge yourself, then you'll attract judgment from other people. Now, I've had struggles with judgment all my life. I've been I've had the experience of being heavily judged by people in my life, shall we say, and I've taken this on board and spent a lot of energy also judging myself. Even though I was saying this to myself, judge not lest ye also be judged, it was in my being. I'd kind of soaked it in throughout my childhood, and I would automatically, my first response to anything would be to judge it. And without even knowing that that's what you're doing. But you have to be non-judgmental if you want to find your true self, because the meditative state doesn't work if your mind is, your thinking mind is consciously taking hold of it and saying, yes, well, this might work and this might work, but you can't do that and that's wrong, and all this stuff. And another thing that came back to me while I was listening to this Darius Wright, and you can't have unconditional love with a judgment. What came back to me was a verse from the Bible, which I looked up and found it was from 1 John 4:18, something like that. Perfect love casteth out fear. There's a bit more to it. It's about judgment as well. It's about you make yourself fearful and you can't experience perfect love. So if we are beings of love, we come from love. There's a core of us that is love, and we can't access it if we make judgments that stop us. This seems to make sense to me, but making sense is not like experiencing it. And experience is the heart of it. Moving constantly into that state of being conscious, observing yourself, being the observed, and what's the other one? Acting, the actor. Both the observer and the observed and the actor. So the last few days I've realised that I've been focusing so hard on the idea of aliens that I've scared myself silly, I got to the point where I was thinking about it all the time. I'd go to bed and I'd close my eyes and expect sleep to come, which it doesn't so much as it used to. And I'd suddenly be thinking, aliens, are there aliens in the room? This sort of thing. This obsessive state, which I suppose if I indulged it enough, I might end up attracting the bloody things when I don't really want to. So I've been countering that by focusing on love. I am a being of love. I need to allow the love in me full expression so I can love myself. And I'm feeling this is helpful because the law of manifestation, and because what I have manifested during the last year, well, towards the end of last year, I realised that I had high blood pressure. And then when I had my blood tested, it was discovered that I also had this blood mutation condition, which was overproducing the red blood cells and making me pretty ill. I'm not sure if I was ill because of that or because of the high blood pressure, but both have improved since the treatments. And along with that, I had this heart condition coming into my awareness, the kind of jumping around of my heart. And you'd think it would be obvious, but I only just realised that in fact these three are connected. These are all to do with the circulatory system, the heart and the circulation. And that this probably could be connected with my lifelong habit of suppressing myself, I guess. Not exactly suppressing my feelings, but telling myself that I don't deserve. I mean, I have spent hours and hours telling myself I do deserve, but there's still this sense of, oh, you're just silly old you, and nothing will change. You're never going to have certain things because you've spent your life being so inhibited and blah, blah, blah. So this, if you look at it in a kind of a metaphysical perspective, you could see that this kind of way of going through life might put a strain on your heart and your circulation, and might actually encourage any defects in your heart to enlarge, because your heart's struggling all the time. And if your heart's struggling all the time, then that might result in variations in blood pressure. My blood pressure was high. It kind of goes up and down. Now I've been testing it multiple times a day. I see that it does that. And it's responding to stress, I think, probably. And then the blood mutation, the JAK2? The genetic mutation in the stem cells that create the red blood cells, might not that also be connected? So there's three things going on, all to do with the heart and circulation. So what I've been doing is occasionally just focusing on my heart and how I love my heart and I love my circulation. And things can heal because they're following the blueprint of the body that they're within. You know, the individual cell is not the whole of it. And I've noticed the last couple of days I've become a lot more kind of cheery, happy, loving, spontaneous, shall we say. So it is having an effect, and I think it is a good thing. Yesterday, for example, we were going to take the dog for a walk, and I got settled into some video on YouTube. And so Chris came in and said, we were going to take the dog for a walk. So I jumped up and went out and said, where do you think we'll be going? And he said, we could go to the Downs. And so I thought, I better put my boots on then, my walking boots, not my street boots, as it were, because we'll be going somewhere muddy. And then he said, we could go to the Long Man. This is a part of the Downs where we have walked in the past with the dog. It's a fair distance to drive there. And I was a bit taken aback because he does this. He suddenly gets ideas. And I said, well, yeah, okay. Actually, if I'd known we were going such a long way, I would have brought my phone with me. I hope we don't break down. Oh, don't be so silly, Julia. We'll be fine. So off we go towards the Long Man, and we're driving down the main road, which takes us there, the Brighton Road, and we come to a traffic jam. And in front of us, there's a van that's just turning around and going the other way. And it suddenly occurs to me, we're going to spend ages in this traffic jam. And the reason the van was managing to turn was there was a side road. And I said, look, we could go down that side road. It's signed to Fulkington. Maybe that's a place where we could walk. And so he turned down the side road. So this was kind of a spontaneous, in the moment, going with the flow, not being inhibited and sitting in the traffic jam and getting cross about everything. And we ended up at Fulkington, which is a wonderful little village. I recognised it. We'd been there a few years back when we were practising for our New Zealand mountain climb. But we were approaching it from the other side, from the one that we had done before. And it was just perfect. We took the dog. He was having a lovely time, running around, jumping over the logs with his arthritic legs and huffling and puffling. And you can see when a dog's happy. He has a smile on his face. And I had a smile on my face as well, because this was something that I had been wanting. You yearn for the countryside. I grew up in the countryside, and living in towns, you can't help wishing you were back there, somewhere wild where you can be amongst trees and see vistas. And we went up through the trees, and then we came out onto the downs, and there was this wonderful scoop in the hillside like that. And you look at this vista, and it's like your heart soars. It's like your soul is actually swooping down this valley, although you're still there standing on the top of the hill. And the sun was flitting in and out of the clouds and lighting everything up and making everything interesting. And we're just on the verge of spring. And it was really lovely. And I was so happy. And I thought, this is the sort of thing that I can manifest. I don't have to sit at home complaining about living in the town and, I wish I could be in the country. These moments can happen. So that's the sort of direction I'm going in. And I'm trying well, you can't really try to live in the moment and get into yourself. What needs to happen is you need to allow the spontaneity to come out. You need to allow the love to come out and recognize it and encourage it. So it's a tricky thing. The other night I was sending myself to sleep by listening to somebody reading a book by Roald Dahl, which I'd never read, something like The Fantastic Story of Henry Sugar. And in this story, there's a character who learns how to see without using his eyes, which is clearly a metaphor for clairvoyance, But in this story, the character is trying really hard. You can feel it in the way the story is being told, that he's really forcing himself to focus his mind on this tiny point. And as much as I was listening to it, because I was falling asleep as well, I was sort of thinking this may not be the way to do it. I'm not sure that Roald Dahl really understood. I don't feel that you can force things to happen. You have to kind of sidle your way into it. You have to be spontaneous and avoid your mind kind of coming in and trying to formulate everything. I have a mind that loves to formulate things, which is not a bad thing because the two work together really, but one has to get out of the way of the other. So that's where I'm at the moment, and I'm finding it quite fascinating. Because just think, if there's a possibility that a blood cancer can spontaneously heal because of the way you meditate, law of manifestation, there are stories of healing. There was the Christian scientists who believed that you could heal yourself, not that you could heal yourself. I think their idea was you would allow Jesus to heal you, something like that. And there have been spontaneous remissions, they're well documented. So this is an area that it's worth exploring because something may happen. You never know. And in any event, I'm just really happy to be alive and to have the ability to find all this knowledge. It's just wonderful. So I better stop there. And I hope I carry on with videos, and I hope somebody comes and watches them because I feel like this sort of stuff ought to be shared. Anyway, till next time, have a nice day. Bye.